What would drive someone to burn the most sacred book of nearly 2 billion people, right in the open, in broad daylight, with cameras rolling and crowds watching? Was it courage or a cry for chaos? But what happened next was something no one could have predicted. Within hours, the entire narrative flipped, not through violence, not through rage, but through something far more powerful: faith, unity, and the silent hand of divine justice. This isn't just a story about an act of hate. It's about what hate couldn't destroy. It's about how one man's fire tried to erase a belief. It ended up igniting a global movement of purpose, pride, and peace. Stay with me, because as we unfold the events that followed, you'll witness how a single moment of darkness became the spark that lit up millions of hearts and silenced the world in a way no one saw coming. What happened next left everyone speechless. The act of publicly burning the Quran was not a misunderstood expression of free speech. It was a calculated provocation designed to enrage, divide, and destabilize. In the age of viral content and emotional manipulation, such acts are increasingly used as tools not just of hate, but of spectacle. The individual who carried out the desecration knew exactly what the Quran represents to over 1.9 billion Muslims around the world. It is not just a book. It is a divine message, a source of guidance, a spiritual lifeline, and a symbol of sacred connection between the Creator and His creation. To burn it in public is to declare a war not only on belief, but on the very identity of millions. What makes this even more disturbing is how such actions are often framed under the protection of freedom of expression. But there is a vast difference between expressing a dissenting opinion and igniting a flame meant to scorch the dignity of an entire community. True freedom never seeks to destroy. It seeks to build dialogue, encourage growth, and challenge ideas with respect. But this act was not a critique. It was an insult wrapped in legality, orchestrated to maximize outrage and make headlines. In that moment of flame and ashes, it wasn't just paper that was set on fire. It was pain, history, and the longing of a people who have long felt misunderstood and misrepresented. It stirred emotions that run deep, memories of colonial erasure, wars waged in the name of peace, and sanctities violated in the name of security. And yet, in the face of this open provocation, the response from many was not chaos but restraint. That is where the world was truly left speechless. Because what followed wasn't a riot. It wasn't blind revenge. What followed was a spiritual reminder that sacredness cannot be burned. That truth doesn't turn to ash. That no matter how dark the hatred, it can never extinguish the light of faith. The provoker hoped to tear communities apart, but in many places it brought them closer. Mosques opened their doors. People of other faiths joined hands in solidarity. The Quran was read more, not less. And in that, something unexpected happened. The act meant to degrade became the spark that awakened deeper awareness. The moment the video of the Quran burning surfaced online, the world split into two clear and powerful reactions, one fueled by hatred and justification, the other by empathy, heartbreak, and solidarity. On one side, a group celebrated the act, cloaking their approval under the guise of defending secularism and freedom. They reposted the footage with mocking captions, amplifying the insult, attempting to normalize desecration as a form of rebellion or artistic expression. To them, it wasn't about religion. It was about control, about testing the limits of what society would allow. This wasn't just Islamophobia. It was a deliberate display of cultural dominance, trying to silence the sacred by burning it in front of the world. But the other side, the louder, more powerful, and deeply human response, was the one that caught the world off guard. People from different faiths, backgrounds, and even those without any religious affiliation came forward to denounce the act. The video, intended to go viral for its shock factor, instead triggered a global wave of compassion. Imams, priests, rabbis, and monks all condemned the incident, not as a religious issue alone, but as a moral and human one. People stood outside mosques holding flowers. Some held the Quran with care, declaring publicly that such hate would not be allowed to define their societies. In schools and on news panels and tweets and on the streets, voices rose to remind the world that dignity must be preserved across all boundaries. Even among those unfamiliar with Islam, the act raised questions. Why would someone hate a book so deeply? What does the Quran actually say? That curiosity led to conversations. That conversation led to understanding. And that understanding created something the one who burned the Quran never expected: unity. The outrage was not just Muslim outrage, it was human outrage. Because deep down, we all know that sacredness, whatever its form, should be honored, not humiliated. This became a moment where humanity was tested. And while darkness tried to scream louder, light responded not with noise, but with action, grace, and a reaffirmation of values that unite rather than divide. In the hours that followed the public desecration of the Quran, events unfolded that not even the boldest media narrative could have predicted. What was meant to be a symbolic act of hatred became a catalyst for a chain of unexpected realities, each one silencing the very voices that had cheered the initial act. First came the silence of the man who burned the Quran. Once proud, loud, and eager for attention, he disappeared from public view. No interviews, no defiant statements, just silence. Reports surfaced of his sudden withdrawal, and even his closest allies started to distance themselves, realizing the backlash was growing far beyond what they had anticipated. It wasn't fear of retaliation, it was the sheer weight of the response. In several cities around the world, people didn't respond with chaos or violence as expected. They responded with prayer. Peaceful gatherings emerged in town squares and parks. Non-Muslims showed up holding Qurans borrowed from friends or libraries, some even placing them next to candles or flowers as symbols of support. Journalists who covered the story neutrally at first began writing with a different tone, moved by what they were witnessing. A community rising not in anger, but in dignity. Then came the global wave of Quran distributions. In Sweden, the UK, Canada, and across the Muslim world, thousands of Qurans were given away for free. Campaigns titled "A Read Before You Judge" went viral. Mosques saw a rise in visitors wanting to learn. Youth who had never engaged deeply with their faith suddenly began reading the Quran more intently, seeking answers. The very act meant to erase reverence ended up reigniting it in the hearts of millions. Most powerful, however, were the moments of personal transformation. In multiple reports, people who had seen the viral video out of curiosity ended up feeling moved by the calmness and patience shown by Muslims. Some who had never spoken to a Muslim before found themselves reaching out to learn. A few even accepted Islam, saying they felt something powerful in the way Muslims responded with grace rather than hatred. All of this happened within hours, not days or weeks. The world had expected fire to spread. Instead, it witnessed water, waves of humility, wisdom, and soul-deep strength that quieted the noise and reminded all of us of what truly holds power. The Quran is not just ink on paper. It is living guidance, memorized in the hearts of millions, recited in every corner of the earth, and preserved with a precision that defies time and challenge. When someone burns a physical copy of the Quran, they are not destroying the message. It is a futile attempt to silence something that was never confined to the page. This became glaringly clear in the aftermath of the public desecration. The act, which was meant to offend and demoralize, only reminded the world how resilient the Quran truly is. It reminded Muslims that their connection to this book isn't dependent on its physical form, but on its eternal presence in their lives, their prayers, and their purpose. In countries where Qurans were once banned or hidden, people still memorized it in secret. In places of war, in refugee camps, in prisons, the Quran continues to be recited with the same passion and clarity as in the grandest mosques. This is not just religious symbolism. It is living proof that this book is untouchable. Not by law, not by hatred, not by flame. When the Quran was burned in public, thousands around the world responded not by shouting, but by reciting its verses louder. Videos emerged of children reciting it with flawless clarity, scholars explaining its meanings to curious minds, and even non-Muslims reading it for the first time with open hearts. This act also revealed something deeper, that the power of the Quran lies not in how it sits on a shelf, but in how it transforms a soul. Its message of justice, mercy, patience, and truth echoed louder than any fire ever could. It gave strength to those who were targeted. It gave clarity to those who were confused. And it gave peace to those who were hurting. Those who thought burning the book would silence it forgot one simple truth. This is the only book in the world memorized cover to cover by millions, across generations, continents, and cultures. No other scripture has been preserved like it. No other message has reached so far and wide while remaining unchanged. The flames that touched its pages couldn't reach its essence. And that essence is what continues to guide, comfort, and uplift hearts even more fiercely when it is attacked. The moment the Quran was burned, something awakened deep within the hearts of millions. Jabal standing firm in the face of insults, staying dignified when tested, and drawing strength from what others try to destroy. The man who burned the Quran wanted Muslims to feel weak, humiliated, and ashamed. But instead of fear, he lit a fire in the hearts of believers. A fire not of revenge, but of renewed purpose. In mosques across the world, khutbahs, sermons that week spoke of resilience, of the prophetic example in dealing with hatred, and of how the Quran itself commands patience, wisdom, and strength in the face of ignorance. Parents sat down with their children and taught them not just how to read the Quran, but what it means. Youth who may have never thought deeply about their identity began to see that their faith was under attack. Not because it was weak, but because it was strong enough to shake the hearts of those who don't understand it. Teachers began organizing Quran circles. University students formed interfaith dialogue groups. Scholars wrote op-eds, reminding the world that Islam does not respond to darkness with more darkness. It responds with light. All of this didn't happen because the Quran was burned. It happened because believers refused to let hate define the narrative. The tragedy is that many who hate Islam have never opened the Quran. They judge a book by the fear surrounding it, by headlines shaped to mislead, by actions of a few misrepresenting the many. The believers know what the Quran truly says. They know the verses that speak of compassion, justice, and the sanctity of life. They know the strength that comes from its message, and that strength becomes even more unshakable when challenged. Across cities and villages, in Arabic, Urdu, English, French, and dozens of other languages, the Quran was being read, shared, and defended, not just by speech, but by character. The act of hate became a turning point, not just for those who were targeted, but for those who realized they could no longer be silent or passive. It was a reminder that being a Muslim today means carrying the message of the Quran with courage, kindness, and an unwavering sense of purpose. In the aftermath of the Quran burning, something remarkable happened. Not just in the reactions of people, but in the unfolding of events that carried a message beyond human orchestration. Within hours, strange coincidences and silent consequences began to ripple through the life of the one who committed the act and those who supported it. News outlets reported that his sponsors withdrew. Planned appearances were canceled without explanation. Even public figures who once applauded his boldness quietly deleted their tweets or changed their stance. It wasn't due to pressure alone. It was something deeper, more unsettling. As if the universe itself had turned against him. When someone wages war against what is sacred, they may believe they're attacking paper or people. But what they're truly confronting is something unseen, something far greater, a divine order that responds not with instant thunder, but with undeniable precision. Those who mock the Quran may have felt momentary power, but the weight of divine justice does not need to shout. It reveals itself in isolation, in loss of peace, in public disgrace that creeps in quietly but completely. The man who once stood before cameras, confident and defiant, found himself surrounded not by supporters but by silence. No law had touched him. No human court had ruled against him. Yet he began to feel the pressure of something much heavier, a judgment no system on earth could control. Around the world, Many who witnessed the act and its consequences began reflecting on how truth protects itself. Time and again in history, the Quran has been burned, banned, and boycotted, but never defeated. Those who tried to bury it ended up buried by time, forgotten by history, while the book they tried to silence continued to grow in the hearts of millions. This incident followed the same pattern. The man's fame didn't rise. It vanished. His influence didn't grow. It withered. The support he expected turned into fear of being associated with his name. And all of it happened without riots, without violence, just the silent unfolding of divine justice. People began to speak about karma, destiny, and God's way of protecting his word, but Muslims knew better. They knew what the Quran already promised, that those who try to extinguish the light of Allah with their mouths, their actions, or their hatred will fail, because that light is protected by the very one who sent it. What began as an act of pure hatred turned into a lesson for the world. Wu, the man who burned the Quran, sought to break spirits, mock beliefs, and divide humanity. But what unfolded was the opposite. He underestimated the resilience of faith, the depth of love believers have for their sacred text, and the unity that rises when something truly meaningful is attacked. The Quran was not weakened. It was strengthened in the hearts of those who hold it dear. Its words were not silenced. They echoed louder across cultures, across borders, across hearts. Divine justice moved without noise but made itself known in powerful ways. The hate that tried to destroy ended up awakening a greater purpose, not just in Muslims, but in anyone who still believes in the power of respect, the strength of unity, and the beauty of unwavering truth. When flames rose to dishonor the Quran, the world didn't watch in silence. It rose in reflection, solidarity, and action. And in that, we were all reminded that no matter how dark the moment, truth will always rise. To everyone listening, may your heart always seek truth. May your soul remain grounded in peace, and may you never be shaken by the noise of hate. Stand tall in what you believe. Let your faith speak through your actions. And when the world tests your dignity, respond with grace, not because you're weak, but because you're stronger than the fire. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your attention. May you walk forward with courage, guided by light and protected by purpose. Good luck and may peace be upon you.